All right, so we're standing between this crowd and coffee. Not a good position to be in, but we'll try to manage. Anyway, thank you very much for joining this panel. We realize that we're approaching the mid-afternoon lull, and therefore we'll have to make a little extra effort to make it lively for you within what is reasonably possible. For your information, I just want to mention a couple of things. I have asked our panelists to be very sort of open about their opinions and views to the extent they can do so without getting in trouble with business partners or employers or others. We like opinionated panelists when it comes to panels this late in the day in particular. So let's see. I've also asked them to the extent possible, interact with each other and bounce ideas off of each other, react to each other's interventions and comments. So we'll see to what extent we might actually be able to get a little bit of discussion going as between the panelists, as opposed to the traditional and probably less lively back and forth between the moderator and a panelist at a time. Let's see. We'll see if we can get some sparks flying. Also, another.
Yeah, I work for the government. Right?
I'm Israeli. You got to do the opposite with me. The opposite.
Exactly. Well, you know.
What did I sign up for?
Also, I should mention that I'd prefer not to wait until the end of the session to bring the audience in with questions, etc. So please, early on, as you hear people speak, think of what questions you would like to raise. I will probably bring in the audience in the event that there are questions after maybe the first couple of questions to panelists. So with that, let's get started with a quick introduction. At the far end of the table, Eyal Bino, who is founding partner of 97212. Was that named after a zip code? 97212 Ventures. I'd be interested to find out where the name comes from, which is a New York-based fund, a seed fund specifically for Israeli founders. So Eyal has worked in a number of industries and geographies, but now he's focused, if I understand correctly, on those early stage Israeli founders. Next, starting from your right, is Lauren Schellinger, who is Vice President and Trade Finance Officer at M&T Bank. Many of you will know M&T Bank as a powerhouse in the region of upstate New York, headquartered in Buffalo. And to be honest, Lauren, I'm not sure how much of a presence it has in other states, but certainly.
We have 12 states that we're in.
Oh, that many.
The Northeast and Mid-Atlantic.
Terrific. But very much a New York rooted bank.
Headquartered
182 years. It's been around for a little while. Okay, next, Oliver Mitchell. Not that necessarily means that much. Some of you may have heard about the collapse of a bank that had been around for 170 years, which happened last month and happens to be my former employer. But let's leave the depressing stories for another time. Oliver is partner. Yeah, I thought, wait, did you just trade? No. Oliver is a partner at FF Venture Capital, which is an international venture capital firm. And there he focuses on some really interesting areas. artificial intelligence, robotics, industrial automation, and others. And I could tell from our conversation that not only is this the area where he works, but he has a real passion for the area and for the technologies that he's investing in. And finally, immediately to my right from where you are, Jennifer Teagan, Managing Director for New York Ventures at Empire State Development, which oversees a range of investment assets that support startups across the state of New York. I should note that I may need to be a little careful about asking Jennifer any tough questions, because I just learned that she is also a member of the board of directors of Tompkins Community Bank in Ithaca, New York, which holds the mortgage on my home. But with that said, I would propose to jump. Not really. With that, I'd propose to jump right in and get us started straight away with a couple of questions for our panelists, and let's see where this takes us. Let me get started with Oliver Mitchell. Oliver, you're a technology investor in some of these really interesting attractive areas within technology. Let me give you a very broad one. Why New York State? What is it about New York State that makes it preferable to other parts of the United States, or for that matter, internationally? Okay, maybe you could mention an example of one or more companies that you have in your portfolio that have put down roots in New York and have good stories to tell.
Sure, absolutely. Let me just give a little background. FF Venture Capital, we've been around for 15 years. We have 6 U.S. funds, and then we have also a fund in Central and Eastern Europe, based in Warsaw, soon to be a second fund there. We invest in Israel, in Europe, and North America, so we definitely have a global international mindset. And just as it's appealing for us to bring technology companies here to the U.S. and specifically New York, it's also appealing for our companies to grow massively global and to go into Europe and beyond. And so we have a cross-border relationship. Having a base in Europe, I sit on the board of a European company, of an Israeli company, many American companies. And so we really do have that international mindset. With that said, to chip away at your first question, why New York? Well, does anybody know what this building is? This building is General Electric's headquarters. And so why New York? Let's go back 100 years to the Battle of the Currents. And this is the place where the greatest innovators launched electricity. Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse. And so New York has been the center of innovation longer than M&T Bank. And so, why do companies want to come here? Because this is a great place, a great launch pad to enter the broader U.S. market. And to give you an example, John, and the audience is, I'll touch on what Eyal is going to speak about is the great, Israeli innovation within artificial intelligence and robotics. Is that I was an investor, or I'm still an investor in a company called CIV Robotics, and CIV started actually as CIV Drone, and has been broader to CIV Robotics. But they started out in Haifa in Israel, which is in northern Israel, out of the Technion, which is sort of like Israel's MIT. And they came out with a premise to use drones to do autonomous surveying. And I met with the founder, Tom Yeshurun and Liav, very early on. And, if you know anything about the Israeli market, which Eyal will tell you more about, it's very small. You can't really launch a startup to sell into Israel unless maybe you're a chocolate company or, or a kosher food company. So they want to come to the US or Europe, and with all the infrastructure construction for surveying here in the US was at the top of their list. And New York is the best beachhead for entering the US from Europe and Israel.
Why is that?
I'm going to get into that. So,
You just started, so.
yeah, I was at a comma. I wasn't at a period. But number one is, for entering from Europe and Israel, it's just closer. The time difference for maintaining relationships, both technical relationships and familial relationships, is just better. Those 3 hours mean a lot for quality of life. But number two, there's so much opportunity, and I'm going to drill down specifically an opportunity which the ESD is actively involved in, and in your backyard, which is Genius New York. And Genius New York is the largest accelerator for uncrewed systems, which means drones and robotics. And it's based in Syracuse, out of the tech garden there. And so when this very nascent Israeli company wanted to enter the U.S. market with a kernel of an idea, maybe too early for FF to fund, but I knew that there was be an opportunity later on. I said they need space, they need opportunity to test out of their idea, to get early pilot customers, to have the incubation to really grow it. And so they were fortunate to go to Genius New York up in Syracuse. And from there, they got to speak to people in solar, in road construction, and industrial projects. And as I mentioned before, they pivoted from drones, which only have a short mission life, about 20, 30 minutes, to a terrestrial robot, which can go all day, on much larger batteries and do, thousands of points a day. And they're killing it in solar. And now they've expanded to the West Coast, and because most of the solar construction happens in California, Nevada, Arizona, and Texas, and expanding into road and industrial projects. And so that opportunity of New York as that beachhead enables that company to drive partnership. We led the last round. It was very successful, and I think one of the most successful things is that Trimble, which is their supplier, also co-invested with us, which is the largest provider of GPS out there. And so, that came through the relationship of what's happening here in New York. When you talk about a soft landing, that was as smooth as can be. No bumps when you were on that tarmac there. So that's why New York.
Terrific. Thank you, Oliver. Let me ask Jennifer Teagan a question.
I have not. I want to just copy all of that and share it to the world. Thank you.
Jennifer, when you and I spoke earlier, you mentioned one question that you often ask companies that are considering New York State, if I understood you correctly, and that is, what services do you need in order to establish your company here? Is that encapsulated?
Yeah,
somewhat?
are you?
No, I would just.
That was a comment.
Just want to make sure that that in some way summarizes it. But the sense I left with is, what are the services? What are the goods and governmental and private infrastructure that they need in order to make the decision? Okay, it's New York. What are they telling you? What are those services that this collective of organizations that has a shared interest in bringing business to New York State do for those companies?
Well, I'm still on this research project, so I'd be happy to have feedback from anybody in the room who does work with international startups, because I am very curious. I think that New York State, of course, is a great place for a number of reasons to come, many of which Oliver already outlined, to come and start a business and from another country, So I'd love to hear, especially from some of the international, the folks who are working with many international businesses, what it is that those countries are seeing relative to other states and what they might be offering to incentivize startups to come, as well as things that they think would be particularly helpful. And I know that's how I got connected with CIBA in the first place, was to learn more about the soft landings program that Binghamton has structured and started. But I don't know. I don't have the answers right yet. Like I'm still waiting or open to hearing suggestions, because I do think that where I sit, I'm very excited. We work with, I've invested in a number. So I manage a pretty significant large investment program for the state. We have over $300 million of assets that we're putting to work directly with startups, as well as with fund managers who support those startups. And we work with a number of international startups that have come to New York. I can't invest in them until they are here, but I'm kind of interested on, okay, how do I get more of them to come? And what would those programs look like that would really help to support those companies to get here?
So this research you say is work in progress, but
It is.
do you have any data points you might want to share? Anything in particular, any sense? And if not, that's okay. But we'll be very interested.
I mentioned Eyal because, who is, actively working
there we
with
go.
Israeli startups.
Thank you, Oliver.
Ran an Israeli accelerator here in New York and provided services to international.
I do on the Israeli side. So in New York, there are 400 Israeli startups with a base in New York, which is significant. And there's actually, as of April of last year, there's 26 unicorns with a base in New York out of Israel, which is pretty awesome. The funny thing is now you see like a success story in the media. I remember like a couple years ago, there was a company called Datarama that was sold to Salesforce for 800 million. And I see like emails coming in my inbox, like breaking news, another big New York success story. And Israelis are like, New York success story? This is an Israeli company. Hello. So, so yeah, I don't want to jump in because I know you have, you're a very rigid moderator. So
extremely. But actually, you kind of read my mind, because that's where I was heading with my question for you. So it's good. Please carry on.
Yeah. So I'm Israeli, born and raised. I moved to New York 20 years ago to go to college, and I thought I'm going to go to college. And 20 years in, I'm still in New York. I live in Westchester. I've been in the New York tech scene for about 15 years now, if not longer. In 2011, I actually started an international program called Global Innovator to help international startups come to New York and cut time between raising their A round, or it was between seed and A. Back then, it was a seed round was $1 million and A round was $5 million. I know it seems like forever ago. And then in 2015, I started Iconic Labs, which is an Israeli focused accelerator for Israeli startups, helping them with go-to-market, pre-seed and seed stage startups, where we give them space, just like Oliver mentioned, where they can actually grow and build their businesses and make it to the first couple of years customers, and then raise a seed round. Invest in about 50 companies through that little incubator. And about a year ago, I launched a proper VC fund called 97212, which is not the zip code for Portland, Oregon. It's actually a combination of Israel country code, which is 972, and then 212 is New York. So Israel to New York. Before that, Iconic, I spelled ICO-NYC, and a lot of people couldn't really know if it's an icon, iconic, ICO. So I said, okay, I'm going to come with numbers, but now I'm having trouble because people can't remember the numbers. So obviously I'm really bad with names. Yeah, we invested at pre-seed and seed stage. Like Oliver mentioned, I think what's really exciting about Israel and the Israel opportunity is that Israeli companies by definition are born global. They don't have a market in Israel. There's thousands of founders looking to get to build a company, and typically they go to the US market, and New York has become over the last probably 5 to 7 years the destination for them. They used to go to the Valley. Time zone is a big issue, so it's 10-hour difference between the Valley and Israel. So when the CEO is there, the development team is in Israel, so he wakes up at 8 o'clock, start his day at 8 o'clock. It's already 6 o'clock in Israel, and even though Israelis work around the clock, it is a bit of a barrier. There's a big community of founders here, and Israelis typically, when they're out of Israel, they're very friendly with each other. They can be sometimes not friendly in Israel. And they like to help each other out with advice and mentorship and connections, etc. And I think what's also amazing about New York is that back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, New York was a hub for media, for fashion, for marketing. Now you see every technology is in New York, from deep tech to drones to robotics to enterprise software, obviously, consumer. So you can find everything here. There's customers here. So you want to be where there's capital. And now there's over 300 VCs in New York, whether it's a first-time fund of a $5 million or inside partners with $2 billion to invest, or New York Ventures. And when you have capital, I'm sorry, well, FF with their sixth fund. And when there's capital, there's obviously a wealth of great service providers like Lauren with M&T Bank, and a community of founders who are helping each other and trying to help each other build interesting companies. I think that is innovation. The last thing I'll say about Israelis is that there's a culture of failure. Like it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be successful, and it's not a shame. Israelis in general are not, they're very abrupt sometimes, so they don't have any shame, and they're considered aggressive. I think they're morphed a little bit over the years and much more westernized. And I think what's really interesting is that the culture of New York, the grit, the work hard, the ability to kind of work on the clock, that resonates with Israelis.
That's exactly what I wanted to bring up. I've been trying to interrupt you because I wanted to ask you about culture and cultural affinities and differences between New York and New York State and Israel. I mean, everybody knows that, regardless of where you stand politically, Israel is just a global hub of entrepreneurship and technology. But okay, what does that mean in terms of startups assimilating or not into the New York business environment? What are some things that work? You've already addressed some. What are some things that do not work?
Yeah. Listen, I think Israelis are programmed differently than Americans, right? I mean, we are can be very direct, very blunt. Sometimes comes off as a bit aggressive. Not me, other people. So I think that the challenge is in Israel, everyone is like basically 2 degrees of separation, right? Like you need to talk to a customer. Okay, can someone, I went with this guy in the army, let me connect you or someone, right? Here, you got to really build that relationship. If you didn't go with someone to college or you didn't work together, you start from scratch, right? And I think that the idea of building relationships over time, it's harder. But I think now this new gen of Israeli founders get it. They come to New York earlier. So that's what we try to do with them. Even if you don't have a base here, come here once a month or once every couple of months, build those relationships, be on the radar of VCs and customers. One of the things that we try to train them, Oliver can probably talk about this, is Israelis can go to a room and 30 minutes later, you still didn't say hi. It's like a guy. It's like a ping pong, guys. Like you can't just like serve all the time. You just gotta need sometimes to listen, not just talk. So a lot of times, us as the investors, many times we're almost like the translators. Like we can get what, kind of back channel to a customer or investor and really understand what they mean, because the founders come back and I was like, how was the meeting? It's like, I have no idea.
Oliver has a great point.
Yeah, I think a couple things, and just take it broader from Israel to broad. First of all, an immigrant is the ultimate entrepreneur, right? And part of that makes up the success of the 75-year success of Israel. But even I'm first generation American. My parents were Holocaust survivors. They came here. And my father reinvented himself. He came here with nothing and became a restaurateur, owned 26 restaurants. And so an immigrant is the ultimate entrepreneur. They come, to reinvent themselves here in New York. And New York historically has been the most friendly place for, we even have a big lady out in the Hudson welcoming everyone, regardless of their economic status, to reinvent themselves. And with that mindset, my father was a restaurateur. Today, people are computer scientists or roboticists, and they're coming to New York with a dream, whether they're coming from Poland, coming from Switzerland or Israel or Asia, and here, it's really important, to be tenacious and to start that startup and to walk through a wall. Now, with that said, you also have to be aware that not everybody you're going to meet with in business has that same mindset. And so that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from. So, and entrepreneurs themselves are tenacious and aggressive. If they wanted to be laid back, they would just be middle managers, right? And so they're gonna, they lay awake worried about payroll. Other people, watch Seinfeld and go to bed. So that they have different pressures, and when they go into a big multinational company to sell them something, they think everyone else is motivated by the same thing that they're motivated by. But that middle market manager is not motivated by financial success. He's motivated by status within the organization. And so part of the job, one second, is that
he can see, he has good peripheral vision, I see.
Part of the job of what we do in working with startups is coaching them and getting them ready to meet, with a multinational company, to take that nascent idea and turn it into a proof of concept, to turning into recurring revenue streams, to scale up and attract great talent, recognizing that talent might not be entrepreneurial, though they might be people who just want job security, but they are immensely talented, and to grow from there. And so that is, what is Eyal do, and what does Genius and what is the amazing network of ESD with all its accelerators do, is provide that support and that coaching to take them to the next level.
Terrific. Thank you. I want to turn to the audience, but before, let me turn to Lauren, who has been sitting there very quietly talking about, aggressive entrepreneur. She has been the perfect
banking isn't as
upstate New York sort of polite panelist. But, you work at M&T Bank, of course, and you work in trade finance, a crucially important service for importers and exporters. And but it to some extent commoditized. My question for you, and I think you hinted at this in some of the emails that we exchanged, what is it that financial institutions, such as M&T providing trade finance, what can financial institutions like yours provide to investors that will want to make them come to New York? How are you, or how can you become very competitive vis-a-vis your average powerful regional bank based in Michigan or in Minnesota that is also trying to attract business to the state?
So this is several questions, but I think I'll try and tackle them. I think what a traditional bank can offer is hopefully a way to finance your operation without relying on diluting equity further. So that's why anybody would come to a traditional bank. And I think New York State, although to be clear, M&T does support other states as well. But within New York State, there are a number of really strong programs that help startup companies migrate to traditional bank financing sooner than in other states. New York has invested heavily through programs very much like Empire State Development, as well as city-specific financing. I think Albany and the federal government are trying very hard to throw money at the problem of shrinking cities outside of New York City. So in cities like my hometown of Buffalo, as well as in Syracuse and Rochester, Albany and Binghamton, there are city-specific programs that allow banks to finance companies and get government or state-backed guarantees to provide debt to startup companies. So earlier stage companies than you might be able to do if you were trying to finance the same operation in Michigan, for example.
And how about a package of services? Are there other things that you can roll out as a banker that will be appealing to a startup?
Sure. I mean, I think certainly there are a variety of banks, especially if you're an international startup. The US banking market is very fragmented, right? We have our large 5 banks, and then we have thousands, literally thousands of regional and smaller banks. As a PSA, M&T is the 11th largest in the US, and we cover the Northeast, but we also bank companies outside of our footprint. The way you'd want to evaluate, if I were a startup owner, I would want to evaluate the banks on a number of parameters. First, the quality of their services, the strength of their international capabilities. Do they have sort of the baseline ability to, facilitate international trade? After that, you want to look at their dedication to the market. Are they the type of bank who will invest in that community, or do they enter and exit geographies and industries based on market conditions? I would recommend, if you're a smaller startup, that you're focused on a bank that has a geographic commitment to an area where you plan to be located. And then also the level of individual attention, especially a startup does not want their credit decisions being made by an algorithm. You want an advocate who will meet with you and get to know the company and help fight that fight internally to get you approved for services.
Perfect. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are already running a little short on time. So can we have some questions? Who would like to challenge our panelists?
You're a Buffalo Bills fan. So.
Oh, well, we can't
No
be friends
questions.
then.
No questions for the audience.
About your venture lending and your quick.
So I guess I will just touch on very briefly. All banks have sort of a DEI mandate to try and finance clean energy and other sort of green projects. And there are a variety of services that traditional banks, and M&T included, have available to help finance specifically equipment and specifically clean energy projects.
Yes, we'll have one here and one there, and we'll cut it quits.
All right, so Mike Jagielski, I'm sure a lot of people.
What stage?
Jennifer, do
I
you?
think that's a so. Can you unpack that a little bit? Right. So
I think Jennifer has something to say about this.
There's been a contraction in the market. That's not news, right? There is a contraction in the capital markets right now. And so there is, a more conservative approach to investing. I personally think it's a great time to be investing more, just because things are, we were in a fairly frothy period just prior to that. And now things are coming back into what I think relative to valuations and things we've got are back in balance. But I mean, my job at New York State is to see that, we're getting better geographic dispersion of capital. And we've structured some brand new programs this year to help see some of that happen with a pre-seed fund, helping things at the incubator stage. We also have a fund to help accelerators called our Community and Regional Partner Program that is actually funding accelerators to give them money to invest with their incubator companies. They have to match those monies, but we do have money available if they can, identify the match. We're also investing in more emerging managers across New York State and opening the door, even though some of those are going to be in New York City, many of them are not familiar, but will be very incentivized by the fact that they have to invest that money and they'll want to invest that money in New York State companies. So, we're hopeful, like with those programs coming online, that there will be more capital availability.
And how much of that contraction you referred to, it relates back to the small still banking crisis that we heard about last month?
Later stage, a lot more, but I mean,
Been a trend, but I'd
Yeah,
say
yeah,
the Silicon Valley Bank was pushing commercial lenders to finance for early stage, and that is not going to happen going forward.
Can I
have a
just can I just unpack this question, because I think it's important for people to understand that not all funding is the same, right? So I'm a venture capitalist, which means I take money from I don't take money. I manage money on behalf
Hope
of
it's
my
not a
limited
Freudian slip.
partners to get a financial return. Jennifer works for the government, and her returns are relative to economic opportunity within the regions of the state, as well as, and she is a LP in one of our funds that has had a very handsome return, and as well as generating a financial return. A corporate venture group might not be interested all in financial returns, but it might be wanting synergies with their business units. The government, outside of state government, the Department of Defense might be looking for specific projects relating to their mandate. And then you might have academic institutions like Binghamton or like SUNY Binghamton or others that are related to their alumni network or their research facility. So, and that's just, and I'm not even speaking about SBA lending and other lending of traditional banking. So it's not, to unpack your statement, funding is dried up. Well, I would encourage somebody to look, where are the greatest synergies? You just heard someone saying, we have a DEI mandate to invest in climate related technology. So if you're a founder here of climate related innovation, you have someone to speak to here. And so you got to unpack that a little bit. Number two is, before, our average valuation is 6 million posts when we come in. Now, to VCs like Eyal is gonna be like, really? 6 million posts? That seems pretty cheap. And that was during the frothy times too. And Jennifer knows that that model works out pretty well for us. And so before, in the time of hubris, which happened before SVB collapsed, that the valuations were out of whack with fundamentals of metrics of revenues and a P&L. So I would also challenge those companies coming out of that incubator to make sure that whatever they're going to market with in their financing relates, to their KPIs, both on their books and also their sales pipeline.
We've got to move on, but final question, and we are done.
Yeah.
I can just relate to this. I'm not going to be as long as Oliver, I promise. Oliver and I know each other for many years, so you can take that. So, right, it goes back to the fund. So what we do, we encourage Israeli companies to come to New York often. So what we do is, on a monthly basis, we arrange a week a month where they come in typically for like a Monday to a Thursday at least, where the first day is a meeting with them and going over their KPIs, looking at target lists. If it's a pre-seed company, who can be their first couple customers in the US, and starting to reach out to them and setting up meetings. Then we'll do what we call VC office hours, where Oliver and FF have been there many, many times. Jennifer's team came a bunch of times, and a bunch of the other VCs in New York, they like to do that because they want to tap into innovation from overseas and from Israel specifically. And then we do typically an event. So we'll do maybe a panel, something like this, and we'll bring in top founders from New York and investors. We'll do a happy hour. We'll do some sort of a rooftop thing where in the summer where we're going to bring in VCs and founders. So I think what we try to do is to be very specific around how can we move the needle for those companies to get them to get customers, because once they get customers, to your question, yeah, it's very hard to get funding right now. But if you can prove your model, even in a small capacity, you are becoming more relevant to investors, right? So I think that's where we try to make a difference for our founders. And, hopefully, in many cases it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think that's the way we try to, do this.
Okay, with that, thank you very much. And I would ask that you join me in thanking the panelists for their great interventions.